Welcome to the Richmond Film Network podcast, your all-access pass to the world of independent cinema. Each week, we go beyond the credits and sit down with the creatives who turn vision into reality. Tune in weekly to find out who's on the RFN pod.
Hello, you're listening to the RFN podcast. I'm your guest host, MK Martey, and today I'm joined by filmmaker Robert Kendzie to talk about his film Depart Not, which is screening at the RFN Indie Fest this August at the Park RVA. Robert, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with how you chose to open the film. It immediately challenges viewers to think about the boundaries between truth and storytelling. So you begin with two powerful and seemingly contradictory statements. This is not a documentary, it's a ghost story, followed by, I swear to you, this is a true story. What kind of experience were you inviting, the audience into with that framing?
So this is obviously a very personal film because it is about something that did happen to me. Something kind of on the weird side of things. I've told this story to my kids and they tell me, Dad, you've got main character energy going on, which is just a weird thing to hear somebody say. And when I was putting this together, it was much more in the vein of a documentary. Like when I recorded the audio, I was doing my best Ezra Klein impression, and I was trying to, the music that I was looking at to back it up as I was started editing it together was much more the kind of thing that you would see in a an emotional piece about somebody going through a rough time type of thing. But as I was putting it just it all felt wrong. It didn't feel right at all to do it. And I was thinking about, how did this feel to me? How does it feel to me now looking back on it? And it feels horrific. I realized basically halfway through editing this that this is a horror movie. This is not a documentary. It is a horror movie. It's just about something real that happened to me, which continues to haunt me, which continues to make me feel weird things, 35 years later. So I started re-editing it. And again, I wasn't sure how to position it. So that's why I put it at the start, because it didn't feel like a documentary to me. And it doesn't sound like a documentary, and it doesn't play like a documentary. So I said, it's not a documentary. And I thought about saying it's a horror show or it's a horror story, but then ghost story seemed more appropriate because it felt like something that's been haunting me for years and years. So, and of course, all the best ghost stories begin with the statement, this is a true story. And this has the added bonus of it is actually a true story. So of course I wanted to play on that.
Yeah. The title, speaking of editing, the title Depart Not suggests both a haunting and refusal to let go. Why that title, and how did you want it to resonate through the film's narrative?
I mean, it is part of those words are part of what happened. Those words are those words, when I was recording it, when I was writing it, in my mind, those are the two words that kept sort of playing over and over in my head. And probably because, as you said, it implies a haunting. It implies something that won't go away. Something that you can't, it's a prescription. It's don't do this. And not just in this case, not just don't do it, but you can't do this. You aren't doing this. This is something that's going to stick with you. This is something that is going to, be a part of you for a long, long time, for your whole life. And obviously it's something I haven't gotten over. So, it's still with me now.
Yeah. You described this as your most personal and, raw project, maybe even to date. What finally gave you the permission or the push to tell this story now after so many years? And, I know the story did change a little bit as you were going through editing, but how did you get to this place?
I mean, this has been a bad year for a lot of people. Everybody's going through, some bad stuff these days. Yeah, all of us. There is a line from Robert Anton Wilson's Illuminatus trilogy where like it's a wild novel from the late 70s, early 80s. And there's a scene where this, like, the main character is he's walking through the lobby. He's a detective walking through a lobby on his way to investigation. He asks a random question of a patrolman who's standing there, "What floor am I going to?" Right? And the patrolman answers. But then the narrator tells you all about this patrolman and, you know, his sick kid and his dead wife and all the shit that he's going through. And he only gets one line in the, you know, in the thing. You know, he mentions something about the, you know, there's some dead fish because a fish tank exploded, you know, and he's interested in the fish because he collects fish, or he's like, you know, he has an aquarium at home or something like that. And the author goes out throughout this whole thing with like, and everybody's like this. Everybody has their own tragedy that they're dealing with. We have no idea, like, the awful stuff that everybody around us is dealing with all the time. And this is mine. This is my story. And I don't know that that anybody needs to watch this. Like, I made it because, again, I was working through some stuff, and this was the way that I felt I could work through it. I remember sitting down and just like trying to figure out, like, what is up with my life, right? That I'm in a place that I don't want to be, doing things I don't want to do, facing problems that I've been trying to avoid for a long, long time. And not in the sense of like trying to avoid solving them or trying to avoid working on them, but like working very hard to solve these problems and failing. And thinking about, like, you know, what does that mean about free will and fate? And having this conversation with myself about, like, damn, this thing that happened to me all these years ago is like a perfect, like, it's this perfect thing that still is, that's a metaphor for like what's haunting me now. It's like it immediately came to mind where I had a choice to do various things, and I looked at all of those choices and how I think they would have played out over the years, and how all of them would have led to the same point I am in now. And thinking to myself, well, did I have a choice? You know, does anybody have a choice about anything? It's a very downer film, and I don't want it to come across as being like, oh, poor me, because again, everybody's going through stuff like this, right? And I'll be honest with you, the film feels self-indulgent to me and pretentious. And at first, I wasn't sure I was going to show it to anybody. I showed it to a few people, close friends who I trusted. Not a lot of people have seen the film. And some people really responded to it, some less so. And it kind of like was along generational lines too. Like, old people seem to get it immediately because it's an old man's story. And younger people, I don't know. Maybe you can tell me whether or not you think it hit. But yeah. So like, I was contemplating whether or not I was going to show it to anybody else, and I saw the call for entries for RFN, and I was like, okay, I did the work. I'll put it out there. I'll see if it, if it gets picked up at RFN, and if it does, let's see how the audience reacts, and that's, I think, going to determine. I hope there's an audience that for it. I hope that somebody will see it and be affected by it, or it'll be helpful, or at least interesting, and I don't know. I'm going to see how the audience reacts at RFN, and that'll tell me whether or not I should show it anywhere else to anyone ever again. Because it, part of me just wants to put this in a drawer and never look at it again.
Yeah, no, that's really relatable as a filmmaker as well. I have plenty of projects that I wanted to keep, private to myself, but I'm glad that I did show them, because that's what you need to do in order to grow. So, yeah, that kind of like vulnerability that you have for sharing your work is, we're all feeling it. And I got the message pretty quick as well. I really did like how you managed to tell the story kind of like almost like in a warning kind of ghost story manner, like you said. I'm glad you went with the ghost story route. That definitely was engaging, I think, especially for me.
That felt more true to the piece. That got across the emotions that I was feeling about it more than just like a straight documentary would have. And I'm getting a lot of mileage with people out of telling me, like, oh, hey, I submitted a thing to RFN in the documentary category and they listed it as drama horror. Oh, by the way, it's autobiographical. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very honest story and it's true to you. So I think it's good that you're sharing it with everyone else. And even though I'm not in that particular, I'm not in my 50s, but you know,
yeah.
I hope to make it there. And I was still thinking, as a filmmaker, I'm in that exact same boat. I think that you were in the 80s of like, hey, should
Yeah.
I pursue journalism instead of filmmaking? Are the chances
Yeah.
of me becoming, you know, a famous director equivalent to being an astronaut? I don't know. I have a choice to make now, and you know, I think that
Mhm.
your film definitely drilled that into my head. It's like, hey, depart not, and I think
Yeah.
I'm not departing. I'm not departing from filmmaking. So I think it
Cool.
helped me solidify
Yeah.
just a little bit of
Somebody,
what your work did to me. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate you
yeah,
saying that because, like, again, like, I don't know, like, I don't want anyone to be in the situation that I'm in. Um, and I say that like, you know, like, I don't know, like I don't want people to think that like I'm doomed, even if I sometimes think that and that's what this film is about. It's about being doomed. And
right.
sometimes I do feel like I'm doomed, but I don't want that to be like I don't want that to be the end of my story. And I've still got time. I don't know how much time. We'll see. When you get to be my age, you start thinking about the end. But and
Yeah,
even then, you know, I'm a little bit premature on that. I got a little time left before I
yes,
really
you
need to
do.
think about it.
Definitely. And I think that the way you ended it with the clips cutting back between a younger self and a present self definitely left it more hopeful than doomed. I didn't feel hopeless. I definitely felt like stay true to who I am today.
I'm
That
glad.
kind of
I'm glad it felt. I'm glad it was a positive experience for you because that
it
I
was
don't know
sad.
how. Yeah.
I still got the, you know, I was emotionally moved, but you know, I I like to take away, you know, the brighter side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, you should be again. Like you know, you're young, so that's where your head needs to be at. I mean, that's and that again, like that's how everybody should be. Um, you know, when you are you know when you are trying to figure out your path and you know you got to be hopeful. And even me, like I have to be hopeful because what's the alternative, right? The
Right.
alternative is to just lay down and die, and like I'm not going to do that. You know, I know people who have done that, and you know, like that's. I reminded my grandfather. My grandfather, who just like you know, when he was my age, he was like basically he had started to check out. You know, kind of like not pay attention to the world, remove himself from the world, withdraw into his books and his sort of like into his own head in a way. And I don't know, like I think that to sort of like keep a young attitude, you got to be around younger people. I always try to hang out with people who are younger than I am to like vampirically leech a little bit of that hope out of you guys and see,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, definitely. We have a way of doing that. And even like my nieces are way younger than I am, you know, they always bring that child out of us. So
Hmm.
so just to reel us back
Sure, sure.
on back here a little bit. So after completing the film, did you come to understand that the moment in 1989 differently than before you had made it?
It's something that I had thought about for a long time, and like the idea of the film came out of me thinking about it differently. Like in a way, this film is a different way of me thinking about it. It is a realization. Like I wouldn't have had this realization about this event. And I feel like it's weird because we're kind of like pussyfooting around the like what was the event, what happened, because that's the film, and I don't want to give away any spoiler. I don't know.
Right.
This is a spoiler free podcast, so and it's only a 6.5 minute film, so it's like there's only so much I can say about it.
Right.
Um, but like the reason the film exists is because I was thinking about that moment in a different way, thinking about fate and about free will in a way that I hadn't in a long time. I'm one of those people who kind of like is on the side of like, maybe human beings aren't as clever as we think we are, and maybe we're not as as free as we think we are. There's been a lot of research about like how decisions are made, and there's evidence to support the fact that we make the decision before we're consciously aware of it. And maybe we don't actually have free will in the way that classically we think of it. I like to tell people, like, I don't really believe in free will, but as far as I'm concerned, like, I have no choice but to act as if I believe we have free will.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird thing. For me, I've thought about that a lot, and if it is true that we don't actually have free will, we are sort of just like following along a path that's set for us. If that is the case, then I think that hopefully for me, that allows us to be forgiving with one another and to give each other grace and understanding that we're all kind of like trapped in this life, whatever it is for any of us, and that we should not be too quick to mete out blame or to claim glory, in our lives. That we need to recognize our place as a part of a larger whole, and be a little forgiving with one another, and not and not take things so serious. I used to have a sign on my door in college. When this happened, it said, if life's getting you down, don't worry, it's not a permanent condition. Don't take it so seriously. It'll be over before you know it. So.
Yeah, that's really insightful, and I appreciate you for sharing that. And not only, to other people, but also to ourselves, like forgiving. We gotta just be kind, especially to ourselves. So
yeah.
So the film works on kind of a smaller budget, but it never feels small. What did you focus your resources on, and what did you have to creatively work around?
When I was planning it out, I wanted, deliberately, I was like, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on this because, again, it felt self-indulgent. It felt a little pretentious. It was very different from the kind of thing that I normally do. I don't make personal films generally. If you look at the other stuff that I've done, I'm like the king of high concept on a low budget, where, I'm like interested in films about, I do think about fate a lot. Like, there's a film I made about time travel and determinism, and, films about, personal relationships and getting old and other, films on various subjects. I like science fiction and weird sort of I like ghost stories. I like, fantasy stories. To be more practical about this, so I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. It's not the kind of film I normally do. So I was like, okay, what am I spending money on? I'm buying Chinese food for a bunch of students. Basically, that was the hard part. The hard part was finding the students, right? I asked, there's kids I know who are like the kids of friends of mine, and I asked around to try and find a few who would be willing to just. I was like, hey, there's no dialogue. You don't really need to act. All you need to do is sit down and eat a Chinese dinner and react to somebody reading something. But it was surprisingly hard to get 6 people together to eat Chinese food in a room. And come on, man, it's free food. It's a free dinner. You're a college student. What, if somebody had asked me when I was in college, I called the theater department over at Mary Washington University here in Fredericksburg. This hey, if you've got any students who want to get together to have basically all they need to do is have a Chinese dinner. They're interested in acting. Come act as themselves as college students. And it was really hard. And eventually one of my friend's kids was able to rope together a small group of people. And the person playing the younger version of myself, there is of course my own kid, who was willing to step in, and put on my stupid hat and wear one of my old sweaters.
Stop it. I love that. That was my favorite part.
it's funny because like I didn't look like that when I was in college, but Colin looks like I do. Like like you can see the resemblance today, even though I didn't really look like Colin when I was in college. But it all worked. It sort of like came together, and so it was really just a 2-day shoot. It was like we filmed the Chinese dinner and the people reading to each other, and then we had another day that was just me going out with Nick, the cameraman, and it was just like, okay, I'm just going to walk around and look sad. So we'll do that. And then the last challenge was like finding stock footage that I didn't have to pay for, and which wasn't terribly difficult. It was just I spent like 3 or 4 hours trolling through a bunch of footage, and none of it was like particularly what I wanted, but I got as close as I could with stuff that that again I could get basically for free, and use in this film. If I'd had a big budget, I don't think it would have been any better than it is now. It was more money and more time and more resources. I don't think would have made it any better. It because it's such a raw film, emotionally. It's appropriate that it was as immediate as it was.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. How did you approach the visual language of the film, especially when shifting between, memory or the actual story itself, or, a more grounded reality? Were there specific, visual cues that you used to like guide the audience through those layers at all?
Right. So I wanted the lighting to be moody, for the flashback scene. And we found out we actually shot it at a place called Oddbox Studios, which is right here in Fredericksburg. And that's not even one of their studio spaces. That's their lobby. But it's this cool, funky space that's visually interesting. Because I knew the location was going to be difficult. The best cinematography advice I ever got from anybody was like, I was asking a cinematographer about gear, like what's a good piece of gear for low budget filmmaking, and he said the best thing for low budget filmmaking is just have an interesting place to shoot in, and don't ever be like in an apartment with white walls. Don't ever shoot in that environment. Find something that is just visually interesting, and this lobby area, this lounge area, it doesn't really look like a college dorm lounge, but it looks interesting enough that it doesn't matter. And the setting isn't really honestly that important to telling the story. So it was an interesting space. We were able to control the lighting so that it was, so it was kind of on the moody side. And the background was less lit than the people. We're trying to keep like this sort of like pool of light around the center of things where this meal is happening. And it had that wonderful red velvet curtain, which when I saw that I was like, oh, hey, I've got an idea for that, which was to take all of the participants and put them in front of the curtain, so they could deliver the lines. The important lines of the film there, and so that could be a motif that's recurring, and so like just keep that section moody. Go when in the sequences where that's me walking around in downtown Fredericksburg, we shot that at dawn because I wanted that sort of like early morning light. Just at noon it would have looked all wrong, and it was a wonderfully like a little bit, it wasn't foggy, but there was just like enough humidity in the air that it wasn't, terribly hard. It wasn't the light wasn't too hard. And like that sort of like that golden hour style light coming in, very directional, looked really good. And I just wanted to find like interesting location. There's that one shot of me standing in front of this wall that has a crumbling mural behind it. That was just like the minute I saw that wall, I was like, okay, you got to shoot my close up in front of that wall, just because again, visually interesting and kind of a metaphor for how I'm feeling, and like something that's crumbling and falling apart. So it was really sort of like guerrilla filmmaking on that particular shoot. And then when you get to the stock images, right, the stock footage, I desaturated all of it and threw a bunch of film grain on it because, again, a lot of it has to do with stuff that was happening in 1989. So it was like, let's see if I can make the footage look like it's from 1989, kind of thing. And it's the same thing with the whole film. Like I put like a bunch of film grain on it. I desaturated parts of it to try and give it that sort of like 16 millimeter student film from my college days look.
Yeah. So let's move a little bit on to, self, choice, and consequence, that kind of theory. The story centers on a man who's questioning, whether it's fate or self-determination. How has your own view of personal agency evolved, especially in the light of making this film? Do you think that we ever make, peace with our past decisions even?
I think that forgetfulness is a blessing sometimes. I have a very good memory. The more that I've gone along in life, the less faith I have in my own agency. As I see what life does to you. There's a line from Game of Thrones, what the Davos Seaworth says, where if you may have to bleep it, but he says nothing fucks you harder than time, and he's absolutely right. From the film, I think it's pretty self-evident that I have a lot of doubts about my own agency, but again, I act as if I do have agency because I don't have a choice. I have to act as if I do have agency. So there's like that contradiction, right? Like, do I have free will? Well, I don't know if I have free will, but I have no choice but to act as if I have free will. So in that, at least, I kind of have to, be responsible and live with my decisions and make the best decisions I can and act as if I have some say in what happens in my life and around me. And in terms of living with the past is with me all the time. Like I said, I have a disturbingly good memory sometimes. And when I think about the past, I often dwell on the bad stuff. But I think that's my own personality, right? I don't think it has to be that way. I think that's just sort of the way that my brain works. Today's my anniversary. Actually, but technically tomorrow, my wife and I went out today to celebrate a day early.
Nice.
And we did an exercise of we've been married 29 years, so we came up with 29 memories for our of our marriage, and they were all happy memories. They were all good memories. So that was good. And obviously there've been hard times too. How could there not have been? But we were like, no, these are the happy memories. We're gonna focus on the happy memories, and we're not gonna, at least for me, like I, was there making the conscious decision. Okay, I'm gonna focus on happy memories, and I'm not gonna think about the bad times, and I'm not gonna let thinking about the good times make me feel bad because of like how things are now versus then, right? So. Yeah, it's hard living with the past. The more you accumulate, the more you have to deal with. It's the baggage of your life that you have to sort of sort and figure out. There's obviously I'm still thinking about this incident 35 years later. It's like, so Rob holds on to things. I think there's the moral of this story, if there can be one.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, and happy anniversary to you and your wife.
Thank you.
How does being part of a filmmaking collection inform the kind of stories you choose to tell and how you tell them?
Okay. That's a really good question. So I am the managing director of the Northern Virginia Motion Picture Co-op, and we're a nonprofit arts coalition. We're based in Fredericksburg because that's where I am. I helped found this about 10 years ago. It is our mission, such as it is to help promote and encourage narrative short films in the region. And our area of operation is broadly like DC to Richmond, Fredericksburg to Charlottesville. We don't have money to give to people, but we do have people and resources and time and advice, and occasionally there's a little bit of money here and there that we can spend on. We have gear too that we help people with, and what we do is basically we want to be a place to connect people. We're not a producing entity; we're a resource entity. So if you're making a narrative short film in the area, give me a call. I can offer advice. I can help find locations. I can connect you with actors. I can see if we've got people who have gear that you can use that you might need. It's all very ad hoc, and it's not particularly well organized. I do a lot of the legwork because I'm the guy who's making the phone calls and writing the emails and organizing things. But we don't really have a membership so much as we have alumni of the various films that we've done. And when the co-op started, a lot of it was coming out of me. Like it was stuff that I had written or I had produced. Because back in the 90s, I worked in Hollywood. I was beating my head against doors there for 10 years before I came out here. So in our group, I was the guy who had experience with narrative filmmaking. So it was like, okay, Rob, you lead the project. As time went on, though, it became very important to me that, look, I'm getting a lot of help with my stuff, but it's important that this is for everybody, right? This is not the Rob Kendzie show. We have to involve other people. So I started looking for other people to bring stories into the co-op. We had the Stage Door Productions, which is a community theater group here in Fredericksburg. They had a one-act festival several years ago that I went to, where they had submissions from all over the world, thousands of submissions that they went to get down to 16 finalists, and I think they produced 8 plays. But they were very, when I was watching them, I was like, oh, all these little one-act plays, these can all be short films. So they were gracious and gave me access to their finalists. I contacted 4 of the finalists about their plays. We wound up doing option agreements for 3 of them and producing 2 of them. And then in 2023, the whole co-op kind of folded up during the pandemic for a couple of years. But when we came out of it again and we're working again, I got contacted by the Virginia Screenwriters Forum down in Richmond. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have a lot of alumni of their organization who've gone on to do, cool things in the industry. They're focused on screenwriting, and they contacted me because they were looking to get stuff that their writers were writing produced, either as short films or in some fashion or another. And so we did a pitch day with them where it was myself and a few other local producers went down, and we took pitches on short film projects from the various writers there. And out of that came a project called Dead, which we did last year, which premiered at a showcase that the VSF held down in Ashland. That's on the co-op has a YouTube channel as well. If you want to see some co-op films, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Nova Motion Pictures on YouTube. You can look that up. I encourage people to come and see what we're doing. And then this past year, we had a second pitch day, and a project came out of that called Custody, which is shooting today. In fact, it had a shoot a couple of weeks ago, and I think they're shooting also today down in Richmond, directed by a guy named Mike Ivey. And there was another young guy who worked on the Witchwood cycle named Kobe Garcia, and he had a script for a film called Angel in Hell, which we've been working on and off for the last year as well, that he is directing. It's his first film, and I've been helping him by producing that. So in terms of how these stories come in, it's whoever is willing to step up and write the emails and make the phone calls and take responsibility, right? And do a project. I'm happy to help, anybody in that vein. I'm happy to extend whatever help I can and to find other people who are willing to extend help. Organizing and pre-production is the lifeblood of filmmaking. It's real easy to get people to show up for one day on a set or 2 days on a set, show up with their gear or their time or their expertise and do the production day. because that's fun and collegial, and everybody, you know, feels is they're having a good time on set doing the thing that everybody wants to do. But it's like people come together for that day, and then after that, everybody leaves again. And then the filmmaker, who, you know, the producer or director or editor is left with it, and it becomes a small
Yeah.
project again. It becomes a small thing again. And it's hard to maintain community. It's hard to maintain a group that does that over and over again. So, you know, I'm always looking for people who are willing to like say, okay, yeah, I want to take a project and keep it rolling, because it takes time. It takes a lot of time and work to do these things. Just this little project, the 6.5-minute project, right? Which cost nothing and took very little time to shoot. There was a surprising amount of pre-production involved in it. Again, like trying to get people in the room to have dinner, trying to find a space to do it in, trying to organize a day when Nick and I could go out at dawn and film. You know, like all of that takes phone calls and emails and organization. And you know, if people are willing to do that, then please, yes, give me a call, and I'll see what the co-op can do for you.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and I 100% agree. Like us filmmakers, for one, we have to stick together, and in the pre-production era, that will make or break your entire film. If you don't have a strong, you know, pre-production foundation,
Yeah,
production's going to be tough.
yeah.
I know. So let's talk a little bit more about. Oh, one I did want to talk about. You know, you kind of touched base on this already with mentioning that Depart Not doesn't really, you know, follow, you know, your traditional, you know, genres or the things that you usually make. So do you see Depart Not as like a singular personal work and not as part of like a larger artistic conversation within your collective?
So I don't want Depart Not to be something that defines what I'm going to be doing going forward. Like,
Right.
because like a lot of awful stuff had to happen to me for Depart Not to, like, you know, like that film wouldn't exist if I had a happier, you know, if my life was a happy tale. It's not to say like my life has been fine. You know, probably that's my own, it's my own emotions that I'm working through in a very public way. And you know, well, sort of. I mean, it's in a film festival, so yes, it's very in a public. It's in a public way. It wasn't intentionally like I made this film because I had to make it, because like I had to express what was inside of me. And all of my films are like that. It's just that usually I'm trying to express something that's a little bit more high concept and less personal. Um, I am more of an intellectual filmmaker in that, like, I am emotional, and I'm always trying to do something emotional, but I'm very analytical in my approach to how I create it. Right? Like I have a vision, or I have a something that some spark of inspiration that has touched me, and you know, I want to share that, but it has to. I have to be able to say, okay, well, there has to be a story around it, and there has to be a, you know, a visual metaphor for it to make it, that makes it cinematic. There has to, you know, there's a process that, you know, that I have to break down, which I didn't really go through as much with this film. Like, again, this was a lot more raw, rough and ready filmmaking, and was a lot more off the cuff than I normally am about the films that I make. A lot of times, like one of the things that I want the co-op to be for people is I want it to be an opportunity to do things that people don't normally get to do, right? So like what I did with Depart Not doesn't really fit the mold of the co-op in a lot of ways, because it's not that it's personal, it's that, just to give you, all right, I'm going to give you an example. So of the type of films we've done at the co-op, we've done, so like Dead, we got to shoot in a hospital clinic. And that's something that we hadn't done before. That was an interesting challenge, and it was an interesting thing for us to do. And also the fact that it was a pitch day project that came from a writer at the VSF. Like there was new stuff there. We're doing things that we haven't done before. We're doing things that you don't normally get to do. And then Witchwood. Witchwood is a fantasy, like, poetic piece, right, where we've got a forest nymph going across 4 seasons, and there's wild costumes and makeup design happening there. And that's not the kind of thing, like, because like a lot of people in the co-op are either like first-time filmmakers, or they're people who are doing stuff like commercials or like a corporate video. The Nick has like done like military industrial stuff, and like during the day-to-day, they don't get to like play around in this arena of like fantastical things and science fiction and weird stories and whatnot. So the whole point of the co-op is like, let's take big swings, let's do different things. With Angel in Hell, which is Kobe's film, that's set in World War II. It's about a fighter pilot who gets shot down behind the German lines in the fall of 44. So we're going out to the reenactment community in Northern Virginia and like getting all these guys who like have all the gear, and like we had a shoot day where we had over a dozen guys in full like military kit with a vintage Jeep from World War II there. We partnered with a museum in Manassas that owns the front half and restored cockpit of a B-25 bomber that they let us shoot in, and we had to, and we needed a studio space to shoot it in, and we didn't have one. But I know a guy who has a brewery, and he let us put the thing in his brewery to shoot. We had a bomber in a brewery, and like this is stuff that you don't get to do, like if you're like doing like a corporate video or you're just doing like interviews, right? Like because there's a lot of people who are like doing good work and like, making a living just shooting interviews and corporate like messaging videos and things like that, where they don't get to be creative and stretch out and do something out of the ordinary and unusual. So I would love for the co-op to continue in that vein and to continue to do things that are out of the ordinary and unusual and a little outre and a little ambitious. I don't particularly feel that Depart Not is that ambitious. The ambitious part of Depart Not for me was the fact that I was doing something that was so emotionally raw for myself, which is not something that I normally do. So I'm not eager to repeat that. It's very hard to put yourself out there and say, damn, I'm not okay, in that way. And, like you can't, that's not something I want to do over and over again, because I don't want that to be me. In the moment, at the time, I was like, I have to say this because I can't keep it in anymore. Right. So I said it. The film helped me work through that. I'm still working through it, but I don't feel the need to like spill my guts all over the screen in front of people over and over again. I'm not a performance artist.
Yeah, well, you being the person in front of the camera and really just like looking you right in the eye, and I think that's very, very powerful. So, and that kind of leads into what I want to ask next, which is, what does it mean to share such a personal piece in a public setting like the Richmond Film Network Indie Fest? Does that kind of, does that idea kind of feel exciting? I know you mentioned
nerve-wracking.
I know you want to put it away. You don't really want to share it anymore, but you can't. So, how are you feeling?
Like I said, the reaction of the audience is going to tell me something. Like it's, as an artist, you have to express yourself. You have to like. Nobody wants to like put time and effort into making a piece of art and then like shut it away and it never be seen. Like I have an instinct to do that with this one because it's so personal, and these are like really dark thoughts, right? And when you put that in front of people, whether it's through art or like sometimes you have to confide in other people, like this is the equivalent of me talking to my therapist on camera, and like that's not for public consumption. the only reason that this is a film is because I had a really cool visual idea to go with it, right? Like I had a visual idea that it sparked an idea in my head. Oh, maybe I can make something positive out of this horrible experience. And if it does turn out to be positive for either myself or for anybody else, really, okay, eventually I probably will put it someplace where people, where people can watch it, or I'll take it to other festivals, or I'll show it to more people. If I get it in front of the audience, like, because that's going to be my question. If we're doing the Q&A at RFN after it airs, it'll be like, okay, like, was this too self-indulgent? Was this too pretentious? Like, am I just being an idiot here with like, I want to see the reaction of other people to it to know whether or not it's worth anything to anyone but me.
Okay, so what are you maybe hoping that how they receive the film? Maybe not just like what they understand, but how they feel.
I hope they feel the horror of my situation. And I think that a lot of people will, because a lot of people are in a similar situation. I'm not alone in this. I'm not special. I think this is a very relatable horror story. I think everybody has had feelings like this at some point in their life. If they live long enough, they certainly do. So I guess that's a way of telling, hey, you're not alone. That's a way, and that I think is a positive thing. Hey, we're all in this together. Hey, we're all kind of doomed, but it's okay. We'll do it together.
Okay.
If people come away with that, I'll be very happy. But maybe they'll come away with something else, or maybe they'll just come away saying, "Damn, I'm glad I'm not that guy." Jeez, I guess there's something positive to be said about that. I don't know. Like, I sound really down on myself, right? Because that's what this film is. This film is me being down on myself. I'm not like that in my day-to-day life, because you can't be, right? You have to, you have to have hope, and you have to have positivity. You just have to in order to get through your day. But this film is me allowing myself to say, damn, life is hard, which is like not a revolutionary statement. So I've just like hope that I have said it in a unique enough way that people will appreciate it, rather than just say, like, yeah, dude, life is hard. Which is why I've made this sort of pretentious envelope for my own little life's tragedy. Because that's, if I can make something beautiful out of something awful, then I'll have done something good with it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do a lightning round.
Okay.
A few quick ones to close us out.
Sure.
So here we go. What's the last image or line from a movie that truly haunted you?
At the end of The Thing. Let's just see what happens.
Okay. If you could make a feature with unlimited resources, but had to shoot it in one haunted location, where would it be?
Ooh. I've always wanted to do a adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's The Haunter in the Dark, which is set in and around this old haunted church. And there is an abandoned church that I found online. I've seen pictures of it. It's up somewhere in New England. I can't remember exactly. They've probably torn it down by now. It was like 10 years ago. But like that would be like, that has to be haunted. Love to do a feature there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Religion and horror definitely go together quite well. Complete this sentence. I make films because
I have to.
I love that answer.
People ask me why are you still making films after all this time with, and I just say, look, I tried not doing it and it didn't work.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing and getting personal with us. Before we go, can you please let our listeners know where to find more of your work, keep tabs with you, and what else you got going on?
Sure. So if you're interested in finding out more about the Northern Virginia Motion Picture Co-op and the films that we're making, the best place to find us, unfortunately, right now is on Facebook. We have a public Facebook page, which you can, if you look up Nova Motion Pictures or Northern Virginia Motion Picture Co-op, you'll be able to find it there. And especially go on YouTube. On YouTube, we're at Nova Motion Pictures. There's a couple of different Nova Motion Pictures, but like we have the most activity, so we're probably at the top of that list. And those are the two. Those are, you can go to the YouTube channel. You can see like some of the other films we've done. You can get updates on the co-op. Right now, we're in the middle of a GoFundMe for raising some money to complete the projects we're working on now, which is Angel in Hell and Custody. Angel in Hell, we're hoping is going to be done by the end of the year. Custody as well, I think. There's a good chance Custody will be done before the end of the year as well. So those will hopefully be hitting festivals in 2026. That's the idea. And eventually they will make their way to the co-op's YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. You guys heard it, folks. That's all we have for today, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Richmond Film Network podcast. Thanks to our guest and to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. Tune in next week to see who's on the RFN pod. Until then, keep the cameras rolling.